Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Friday, October 15th. Starting earlier, today, actually woke up and I couldn't tell if it was like 7 in the morning or 7 in the evening, which just really goes to show how crazy insomnia can be. And while that usually does happen to me on rare occasions, for a few minutes, I usually get some kind of context clue as to what time it is fairly quickly, but I wandered around for several minutes going, I'm looking outside and it's kind of dark. I'm not sure if it's getting darker or lighter. It's just like craziness, certainly. Let's see. One match solo mode, one match as swordcraft, shadowcraft, forestcraft, dragoncraft. What do we want to replace? Probably shadowcraft. And then I think it's probably now time to turn off the solo missions. Oh, I didn't realize it just changed all of it immediately. Well, that sucks. I was not expecting that to happen. Okay, for the accountability section today, yeah, I've been trying to settle in a little bit with my new ISP. Everything seems to work fine, if not amazingly better. Let's just hope that there isn't any back-end problems. I mean, there is always a chance that the billing will just be terrible, or that for some other crazy like uptime reliability issue, I'm potentially going to be dissatisfied with this new ISP. Also, there is a decent chance that it will be very nice for this like 1 year introductory period and discounted period, and then all of a sudden the price will skyrocket and creep up as after the year has happened. So yeah, it sucks. Like, ISPs generally suck, even when you're having a good time. There's just so much bad things that they have done in the past, and so many horror stories you've heard. I guess Forestcraft, Portalcraft, or Shadowcraft now on this arena is what we should focus on. But I guess I also shouldn't just Forestcraft won't win. What were the other options? Yeah, I shouldn't just assume negativity. Portalcraft or Shadowcraft, I guess, would be our other options. I'm still playing Lego Pirates of the Caribbean. I'm like 2 of 5 levels into the third movie, which means there's probably about 7 levels out of what I would guess is 20 left to play in story mode, and then there's going to be, just like all Lego games, going through it a second time in free play mode. But Lego Pirates of the Caribbean definitely feels like a shorter game. I am running into hiccups. Yes, in the hub world, but not in the levels themselves. I have not noticed any hiccups in the levels themselves. And it seems very much directly connected to just the way the hub world is trying to load in more visual textures. I suppose I could experiment a little bit more. Let's play. I think I might want to play the entire story mode with the settings I have now. Windows compatibility mode to Windows 7. Maybe I drop it down to even Vista. Or whatever would be before Vista. XP. Yeah. Yeah, you drop down to compatibility even to that. Maybe that would do something else to get some of those little hiccups done.
Why is it the string is so pricey?
But it doesn't in any ways feel as bad as previous Lego games have felt. So I'm fairly happy with that. I desperately need to schedule things. I've said it hundreds of times though, so I think particularly I'm going to spend today just scheduling things. I think also today is a great day to see how fast videos upload to YouTube with my faster internet speeds. Let's remember to attack here. And honestly, until I can schedule things, I'm just allowing myself to be fairly blissfully ignorant as to just probably how many things need to be scheduled and how close I am to the content just not airing at all. There are definitely arguments, and I haven't put a lot of thought into this yet, but there are potentially arguments to stop the weekend uploads of the old Shadowverse live streams. That way it increases the odds of the pre-recorded videos having a little bit more success. That being said, pre-recorded videos are not having any real success still. It's still pretty bad.
This'll be over quick.
Like Hellblade, Susuna's Sacrifice, or for instance, is a game that's airing right now, and it's just not getting any views at all. And I really had hoped, as I hope with most let's see. I had hoped, as I hope with most new shows, that would catch people's attention and get more views. Since I'm thinking about ISPs, I am running around the disaster scenario if I just didn't have any internet for a prolonged amount of time at all, or what could I really do?
You'll make a good test subject. Quite
that really wouldn't work well for me at all. Like, even if I wasn't trying to run a YouTube channel, I would, like, getting all your internet from a cell phone, even with an unlimited plan, would be incredibly slow, and I watch way too much YouTube. It would be the closest digital equivalent I think I could ever reach if I had long-term downtime on the internet to being homeless. It would just be completely unacceptable. Right. So you evolve this, I guess. And then you do this.
Carry out the mission.
And then you knock that out, I guess.
You won't hold me back.
There's just been like no allied artifacts at all.
Go.
I am such a genius.
I played that wrong, obviously. I should have gone the other direction. Alright, well, there's really no reason to make this Friday go longer, so let's go through the video game news and simply be done with it. So Minecraft is having a Minecraft Live on October 16th, 2021. When, where, when, why, and wow, it says.
Don't underestimate me.
Seems like it's just going to be a live stream. I doubt they're going to announce too much new for actual Minecraft. There might be some differences between like the Windows version and the Java version that are with the gap being bridged, and I wouldn't be super surprised if there was a introduction of some other Minecraft spin-off game trying to do that again. But yeah, I'm not expecting much, really. It would be crazy if they said, hey, we've got a whole new update that we haven't been teasing, because that's just not in line with the way Minecraft has done things. Yeah. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says the Nintendo Switch N64 and Genesis controllers are now on sale in North America. Which, yeah, I still don't really think it's quite logical to want to own these controllers and play their small selection of emulation. That seems pointless. One of the things about OBS is it is, and we saw this in the last recording, it is very easy for the monitors to get messed up in monitor capture mode with the way I turn monitors on and off. It'd be nice if it popped up a prompt before you press start, just to be certain you're doing the right monitor, but I don't think there's anything like that that exists. Alright, so we can play this. We can give this Bane.
Everything was a lie.
You can kill one guy.
You won't hold me back.
We can play this. And we can kill that guy. We can do this to do 3 damage to an enemy follower. Otherwise, we're just going to end up putting things on the field.
Hostile life form detected.
Let's see.
The truth will cut you down.
Terminating hostile life form. Heavy
That.
impact sustained.
Do that.
I'm out of cash.
Play that.
Verifying access.
Sleep.
I'm out of cash.
Yep. Gamatsu says Animal Crossing New Horizons version 2.0 update and paid DLC Happy Home Paradise launches November 5th. Just in case we didn't know the actual date. I suppose that is what would happen, is if I just in some kind of apocalypse scenario had no access to the internet, I would have to try to severely reduce how much both uploading and downloading I did, and I'm about to lose here, obviously, and then probably just get a Nintendo Switch and like double down, triple down on playing offline single player games and not making a YouTube content at all. Yeah, I think it would definitely, at best case scenario, I would have to make incredibly edited, curated content. It would be a completely different style for me, and not particularly something I think I'd want to do. Like, one video per month at most, and it would be probably heavily edited 5-minute videos. It'd just be doing so much like everyone else does, which honestly probably would succeed more, but it's not where my interests lie by any means. But yeah, the good news is that that's not really going to happen. And if it does happen, then we're probably in some kind of zombie apocalypse type scenario. Not with real zombies, of course, but with the general idea that all infrastructure has just collapsed. And at that point, everybody is just spending all their energy and time day to day trying to survive, or failing to survive. The DC fandom apparently happens in tomorrow. Let's see if I can do this. 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1. Nope, that's not gonna work.
Where my blade dances,
1911 works though, as far as age verification. So yeah, DC fandom starts in 1 day, 1 hour, 48 minutes, and about 20 seconds. We're expecting to see a couple of things that will be video game related, but even when you look at like this ticket, you either take this as a collection of all the DC properties that they've done recently, and they're just trying to promote everything that would be expected to be promoted, or you take this as this is what they're going to talk about. Which is kind of funny because, like, Batwoman here, I doubt they'll really talk about too much, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is something to that.
100% streak and 0%
Let's see if we can just open this image in a new tab. We can, but we...
Strike now.
Yeah.
The string is so pricey.
Alright, so you have the CW Superman series, the CW Batwoman series, you have Suicide Squad here. Here's some general Batman and Aquaman and Wonder Woman and Cybertron. Then you have like Shazam. I have no idea who this is supposed to be. This is another CW series. And you have a Flash here, but I don't know if that is tying into the CW Flash series because that has ended. So that would be a little weird for them to promote something that is just ended. But not crazy, because you probably still want some DVD sales there. It kind of looks like Catwoman. It maybe is going to play a role. And then you have a Green Lantern here, and then here's Supergirl CW series. And then a Robin, which I don't recognize where that would be from too. So we may see a Robin, one of the Robins. I don't know if this is Tim Drake or not. And then you have the Teen Titans, and maybe Teen Titans Go, or maybe these are just Teen Titans, whichever the newest one is, whether that was Teen Titans Go or whether the newest one is Teen Titans. And then you have DC Super Heroines down here at the bottom, which that's, I guess, the newest cartoon thing for girls. And then you have a Batgirl here that doesn't make sense. And then you have a dog here, which maybe is K9. So maybe they're gonna try and make an animated crypto dog, not K9. K9 is Doctor Who.
100% streak, and
This'll be over
swing in a
quick.
turn and up. There's our puppet again.
There we go.
Useless puppets get no love. Hold still.
So, yeah. Of these, none of these really directly look like they are video game
So pricey.
related imagery. You could easily have some video game related imagery, but there's kind of just no guarantee that that is
This'll be
what's
over
gonna
quick.
happen. Guess we'll just go ahead and play this. Attack here
Hold still.
and attack here. It is very arguable whether a DC event or a Marvel event really even is newsworthy to as far as the category of video game news. We're still waiting for the Marvel second dinner collectible card game. Meanwhile, there is a DC collectible card game that has been announced, kind of beating them to the punch. Arguably, I would say Marvel has more characters that they've put a little bit more care into preserving, whereas DC has pretty much only cared about the Flash Rogue Gallery, the Batman Rogue Gallery, and
Terminating hostile life form.
a few
Begin.
other characters.
I'll
Like,
sever your life with one
a
snip.
lot of their characters are not
Verifying
not
access.
particularly cared about or taken good care of. Particularly, you see that in the case of the movies. Moving on, the Xbox Series mini fridge is pre-order available on October 19th. I don't know why anybody would really do this. This was like a joke product, and
Looks like I'm up.
I think we are well past the point in which
Forfeit your life.
meme games can,
All the magic
or
I-
meme
Here I go.
products should exist and should really play any role in people's lives. That's kind of ridiculous.
And see that you carry out your mission.
Okay.
Oh, my beloved Nava.
Let's see.
Sleep.
The work is never over. Carry out the
Do
mission.
this. And then attack here, I guess. And I guess that's all we want to do. Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yabai, the Hinokami Chronicles, is now listed on Steam. It's already on the fall list. I think we had already talked about this, but I suppose it was worth mentioning again. One of the broadcast people, I guess the people in charge of taking complaints about things being inappropriate to be broadcast on air in Japan,
Our bonds.
did
I shall cradle the world once
release a statement saying that Demon Slayer was acceptable to be aired in its time slot on the air. I think it would be fairly crazy for a Japanese like protection TV kind of censorship organization to go against any anime in Japan airing on TV, because the time slots they tend to air them at are usually later at night if they are not just the really kid-friendly ones, kid-friendly animes. And if anything was actually going to approach a level of controversial to them, to the Japanese eye, and instead of complaints from other people who, anybody filing a complaint to this organization that's not Japanese should just be completely ignored, because that's not the audience, and that's not an appropriate group of people to be filing a complaint. It'd be like if I called the BBC in the from the United States and said, you shouldn't be airing this on British Airways. It's none of my business. And the BBC does not represent me. It's extremely questionable why Demon Slayer would have gotten any complaints at all. There has been this controversy, and you probably will notice in the screenshots too, that the main character here had these like earrings that had the symbol of a symbol that looked somewhat similar to the rising sun flag. And I know other Asians hate the rising sun flag and kind of just hate Japan anyways, so they were complaining about that in like Korea. It is kind of just hysterical complaining, and it's a lot like when PETA complains about something just to get attention. Otherwise, there's like not a lot going on in Demon Slayer as an anime. It is a action fighting anime. It's not super horrific, it's not super gory, it's not super violent compared to things that would have been aired much earlier. Sure, anime in general is pretty extreme compared to other things, but yeah, this has been an incredibly popular anime too, so it's probably getting more complaints because of its popularity more than anything. But it is also important to remember that Japanese companies are incredibly averse to any controversy. So if there really was any thought that there would be controversy, even a few complaints being considered legitimate, the show would have been voluntarily pulled long ago. You also have to remember that most anime either comes from a manga or a light novel, so the series usually is slightly more violent in the manga or a light novel, or slightly more explicit in one way or another, more extreme in one way or another. And if there were going to be complaints, it would have been at that point. So they know what they're getting into, and they kind of know the general audience numbers that they're going to get. So yeah, I think that there's just a little hysteria there, and you don't see that in anime much though. Like you allow they allow a lot of garbage on their TV, as much as people in the United States allow a lot of garbage on their TVs, as far as just like bad products or violent or explicit products. And I'm not 100% sure how many animes actually air over the airways and how many actually air on paid cable, basic cable, extended cable, things like that.
100% string and 0%
Verifying access.
Epic Games has this thing they're promoting now where you can subscribe to their emails and receive a $10 coupon to a purchase of a game for $14.99 and up. This might be the indication that the Epic Games Store is starting to to run out of money. Like, now that the Epic Game Store is going to, I think, be fairly established, they're running out of time to say, well, we're using the Epic Game Store as a loss leader, but we're gaining new subscribers to the Epic Game Store, and we're getting more leads, and we feel like in the long end, more customers are going to come in, and they're eventually going to spend money. It's been, I think, over a year and a half at this point that the Epic Game Store has existed. They've been giving away free games every month at minimum, usually every couple of weeks, I think, to try to bring in more customers, and they're just not seeing that. Now they want to turn those free customers like me, who just take the free game and would never ever spend a dime at the Epic Game Store.
This is part of learning.
They're gonna take those customers and try and eliminate them or convert them into spending customers, not eliminate them. They're trying to encourage them and convert them into spending customers. And that's where the rubber hits the road. We see this from the other side, certainly, as we look at almost every game that comes out on Steam, in that there's just a ridiculous amount of games on Steam that don't sell, and people would never actually buy.
Oh, guinea pigs, where are you?
Enemy
So
identified.
quick.
Let's see. Video Game Chronicles says the Call of Duty developer Sledgehammer Games announces a new UK studio. Studio will support Call of Duty Vanguard and explore future projects. If you establish a new studio to just be a support studio, the explore future projects there, in my mind, would be very questionable. Like, I definitely have worked projects, work jobs where it's just like, we need you to do this now, but in the future we're going to do something bigger and better, and that bigger and better thing just never comes about. Like, you really shouldn't take a job for promises of the future, or for promises in general. You should take a job for what it is offering now. And I wouldn't be surprised if all these new employees at this new studio find themselves spending the next 4 to 10 years supporting Call of Duty games and never being allowed to make anything new. And from the perspective of a programmer, someone who was classically trained as a programmer, that sounds like a very undesirable position to be in. Because programmers in general do want to create something new. They're not particularly happy with the idea of just maintaining or repairing other people's code. Although, as a new programmer in any job, you probably are just assisting and maintaining other people's code. And that's not very creative. There's a difference between support and development, and if you're a programmer, you probably want to be in development as quickly as possible and not in support. If you're in support, somebody's got to do that job, but it is kind of the grunt work. Like, I suppose a good equivalent is the idea of how many mechanics are out there that repair and support cars compared to how many people actually get to design and manufacture a car. And I don't mean like on the factory line of a car assembly facility. I mean literally drawing the blueprint for how a car is built and put together. It's almost certainly tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands to one, as far as the people who can design cars versus the people who repair and maintain cars. But then again, I guess there is a point to make that you probably shouldn't care too much about what you're doing as a job anyways, because your job shouldn't be your life and it shouldn't really define you. Most jobs are boring and repetitive and not fun, otherwise they wouldn't be paying you to do it. Here we have a game on Steam called Electhead, which looks like it's just a platformer. $9.99. Bunch of languages. I don't see anything here particularly useful, and it's just got like emojis for its description. So it's like electricity plus head plus puzzle. And while I do use emojis in my own descriptions of titles and things, I also put a ridiculous amount of text and everything, where this game seems to have no text as whatever kind of puzzle platformer it's supposed to be. It's claiming to support a ton of languages, almost every language I think you could claim to support on Steam. But in reality, I just don't think there's actually any text at all in the game. And $9.99, even at that, still feels a little too expensive for what's being shown. It doesn't look like there's really any enemies or even a lot of dangerous scenarios or that you could run into.
All of you.
Let's see. This. And then I guess you give that poison. And I guess you evolve that. Let's see, here we have a game called Mon Amour, which looks like nothing of interest. $8.99, English, Chinese, Japanese. Yeah, I don't see anything there worth mentioning. Here we have a game called Gravity Runner, which looks like nothing. $8.99, English only. Here we have Yugo Puzzle, which looks like nothing. $6.99, whole bunch of languages. Here we have a game called Connect the Dots. I kind of think we might be able to burn through the games today, and we may just go through all of them today and do a follow list cleanup, and then have Monday be a slower stream, but I probably am getting way ahead of myself to actually think that. This is 59 cents and looks like nothing. Here we have Spirit and Katana, which looks like it's a visual novel, and that's about it. Like, I'm not seeing anything else of real interest. There is a danger certainly of having characters in lighter clothing like this, and then having one character look fairly short, which tends to imply that they're underage. Yeah, that you probably wouldn't want to have such a disparate height in general between the tallest character here and here, and then here you have what clearly looks like a very older looking character in basically a different anime style completely than this. But then that also runs into the catch-22, where you're almost, if you're agreeing with the idea that Steam maybe doesn't like characters that look younger, you're also agreeing with the idea that it is straight up against Steam's rules to have a child character in a story, which that's ridiculous censorship, certainly.
The unknown
even in an adult
Terminating hostile
themed
lifeform. Terminating
store
hostile
game
lifeform.
where there are
Heavy impact
sexual
sustained.
situations between two consenting adults, there should be the possibility that at some point the natural progression happens there and they have a child, and as long as the child is not involved in the adult lewd scenes and sexual content, then there's really no reason that should be immediately just disallowed. But yeah, that is seemingly how a lot of the games get treated on Steam, is that if there is a kid in the game or a kid in a school uniform in the game at all, even if they are not one of the romantic options, a romance game, even a just light romance game with no nudity or anything, or seems to be eliminated. Not to mention the fact that you can't tell a story of puppy love at all, where here's the story of two junior high schools or high school students falling in love for the first time. There's an anime called His and Her Circumstances that is literally just that romance story being told of their first relationship and their first love. And honestly, in modern time, I think there would be a lot of kind of like pearl clutching SJWs that would have a problem with that being released.
Time to go. Lickety swift.
And you definitely don't see that. Yeah, I wonder, come to think of it, they've made this new remake of Wonder Years on TV, and I haven't been watching it or anything, but I feel like the Wonder Years, the original Wonder Years, definitely had Fred Savage, I believe he was the main character, falling in love and pining after one of his classmates. So I wonder if that story will be told, or a similar story will be told in the new Wonder Years. It kind of should be told, but it very well may be an indication of how censorship has gotten worse over time, not better.
Hostile lifeform detected.
Of course, there are also just different rules for a big broadcast TV channel versus
This'll be over quick.
a small
Terminating hostile lifeform.
game developer. I feel like I'm kind of rambling here, but I think I'm halfway making sense. Anyway, Spirit and Katana is $5.99, English only. I don't think there's enough polish on it as a visual novel, though, to really catch my attention. I also would say that, in general, I don't know if I really want to play a visual novel that is set in a fantasy world, because, I mean, this is tagged JRPG, but I don't think there really is any JRPG elements here. Like, this to me looks like all text. If there was actually even a generic RPG Maker encounters where you were fighting people, they would be showing it on one of these videos. They've got plenty of them. So, yeah. Even if the RPG is somehow a talking-based RPG, which I did hear about a game where that was the case, where it was an RPG kind of mechanic, but it was not fighting people, it was instead just talking.
Sustained.
Excuse me. Let's see. I guess you put this here. And then attack that. And I guess attack that.
The winds are beyond
Play
my
this.
grasp.
This'll be over quick.
Begin.
So now we have an enchanted puppet that
The night wanes.
was that enhanced
Hold
puppet,
still.
not enchanted puppet.
Verifying access.
There we go. Let's see. Video Game Chronicle says the popular, I'll put that in quotes even though it isn't, gaming forum Reset Era has been acquired by MOBA Network for $4.55 million. The forum was founded in 2017 following the, I'll put this in a quote, also demise of NeoGAF. Let me do a little research here.
Here I come.
Is NeoGAF dead? Let's see. I don't think I've ever even been to NeoGAF, but I can say here under gaming discussions, there is a point here, a comment here that is posted just a moment ago. This forum has 415,136 comments, and I assume this is probably like retweets here at 55,954,709. Let's see. You have another one that's on the communities, has only 573 comments 4 minutes ago. Here you have one that is off-topic discussion that has 357,468 with what looks like 38 million retweets. That really does not strike me as a dead community. In fact, here we claims to be the leading video game community since 2006. Let me, oops, forgot to play. Well, regardless. And here the Reset Era has been sold to MOBA Network as a top trending, and it is tagged as cringe and drama. As either the comments have cringe and drama in them, or the story itself does. But yeah, overall, it looks to me like they're boosting or claiming over 1.2 billion posts. They have 154,819 members with 910,000 threads, and they're even highlighting the latest member, which that's interesting idea to highlight the latest person to join your forum.
0% fluff.
Let's see. So you do have a pop-up at the top here going register an account. They have also saying a pop-up that the politics forum has been nuked. Please don't bring political discussions to the rest of the site or you will be removed. Thanks. Like, and it was, if I vaguely recall, some kind of accusations of toxicity, but not anything that was ever led to a lawsuit against the person in charge of NeoGAF that led to a lot of hysterical people leaving and forming Reset Era. It feels like a lot of people that went to Reset Era were actually mainstream video game journalists who really have no business being on NeoGAF or Reset Era in the first place. We have seen several articles being mentioned from Reset Era over the past couple of years, none of which are particularly newsworthy or things that should have been reported on at all, in my opinion. Let's see.
Watch as I wind and wind.
So let's go with reset era now, because what's good for the goose is good for the gander, I would say. You have a site that looks almost exactly the same in layout, and they just basically stole the layout and concept. And I guess maybe these are top level comments. The gaming forum has 136.8 thousand top level comments with 21.1 million. They are abbreviating the numbers here. So these numbers do seem fairly big too. Let's see if we can find a way to jump between the two here. So number of threads here is 281,000, whereas the number of threads here is 910,000. Now it's an older site, so maybe you could excuse some of that. But I don't know if you really can excuse a lot of that. Suffice it to say, getting back to the news as being reported by Video Game Chronicle, which sadly is still just a little bit too much of an SJW source. I've just not been able to find a non-SJW source that focuses specifically on Western games. But anyways, yeah. Video Game Chronicles claiming that Reset Era is popular. I'll put that in quotes. Claiming that NeoGAF has demised. Put that as straight up a lie. MOBA Networks owns fan sites of several large properties such as Dota Fire, Smite Fire, League Spy. So immediately then you know, unless they're really going to commit to letting Reset Era run itself, you immediately assume that there's going to be pressure to not put any negativity, at least against Dota, Smite, and League of Legends.
Watch as I wind and wind.
Let's see if this works.
Why is it the string is so
This one can't be
bracy?
destroyed. All I could try and do is reduce its attack and defense.
Everything was a lie. Except harmony.
Yeah, this still won't kill it. Like, nothing kills this card, this Relic Goddess. Once they get it on the field, you've lost. Yeah. This deal includes $3.55 million upon closing and a further $1 million to be paid on December 31st, which acquires the base of 55,000 members. There was a similar thing that happened to Reddit too, where it was acquired basically by a Chinese-owned company, and yeah, Reddit has not been better since that has happened. There's, if anything, just more of the flaws of Reddit that probably existed even before it was acquired in the past have been further exposed. I kind of would like to get away from Reddit, but I don't think I'd go to Reset Era, and I don't think I'd go to NeoGAF, and I don't know if there is a better site to have to check out. One of the things that I am feeling is happening now is that we're kind of running out of websites in general. There aren't new websites trying to compete with old websites. So if you want a Facebook competitor, for instance, do you really have a good option? No, and that a lot has to do with who's actually engaging with what social media service, but there is
I'm not lonely. Not with everyone around me.
but yeah, I would like to see a new Reddit. I would like to see a new NeoGAF that wasn't just designed from a absolute hate or an absolute desire to flee a previous site. There was goat.co, for instance, was one of the flee from Reddit and go to a more free speech, or at least claiming to be free speech site. And yeah, I don't know if it was vote or goat.co was the name of it. And yeah, I tried it for a little bit, but yeah, it didn't really work. There was too many people that were straight up just posting horrific, objectionable, racist posts and spamming, and there's just, it's too easy to astroturf your competitor with garbage, or just for a competitor to get astroturfed with garbage, even if it's not actual competitors doing it. And forums are just a really hard thing to maintain, but we still kind of need it. We need a lot of sites, generally. Everything is just kind of drying up and becoming the equivalent of Amazon.com and Facebook owning everything, or Google owning everything. I question if perhaps we just need a Internet 2.0 so that everybody has to use a new kind of HTML that's not backward compatible with HTML5, which that would be really frustrating to have to learn a whole new language. But at a certain point, maybe that's what we need to do, is just force everybody into, hey, this is the new web, this is the new Internet 2.0. It is nothing like the old internet. It is not in any way backward compatible. We just need to start anew, start fresh. You see this like on the Google Play Store too, where there's Google Play apps that are 10, 20 years, probably not 20 years, but like 10 years old, and they're really not compatible or designed to run on modern versions of Android, and there should be newer versions of that, but there often kind of aren't. Yeah.
Gonna have to fix myself up.
I feel like in a lot of ways the internet, in the spirit of cooperation, may just be in a different place now too. And there was an actual desire when the internet was originally created to be about sharing and disseminating information, whereas now it has just been ruined by corporate interest.
Heavy impact sustained.
What fine threads you have.
Alright.
This'll be over quick.
Go ahead and play this, I guess. Play this.
Verifying access.
And then do we want to evolve anything?
Begin.
Yeah. I definitely do see how if I had played a little bit better, made a better deck, this deck would win. So we should look at this post. Let's see. The original poster goes, I understand if you want to lock this thread, mods / evil lore, which I guess is probably one of the mods. It's interesting news though. And we can see this has gone 48 pages, so it wasn't just immediately locked. Whereas frankly, on Reddit, I have seen a lot of posts that just kind of very quickly get locked. Plus, there's a lot of posts on Reddit that have kind of these like banner ads or top level comments that are complaining about other parts of Reddit and not just staying within their own lane. So you'll see a r/gaming post potentially just, I'm not sure if this is actually true for r/gaming, but as an example, you might see a r/gaming post and then the first top level comment will by default automatically be talking about vaccine denial, and how Reddit is full of a bunch of vaccine deniers, which, yeah, if you're spending any long amount of time on Reddit, you don't need to see that same copy and paste message multiple times. And that's unfortunately recently been exactly what's been happening. Let's see. This really seems like they've mostly just copy and pasted the press release. And seems to be basically just a press release, and then you get to like the top number 2 posts, and it's we're having a fire sale meme. Let's see, what other websites do they own? Yeah, a lot of video game sites, so they're clearly just going to buy Recent Era as a way to advertise to them. How much do they pay the mods? Peanuts. This is an interesting, like, kind of difficult way to read this forum. And you're reply quoting, but everything is kind of I bet Evil Lore is the main guy in charge of NeoGAF that people didn't like. I think that was his name. Is there a way to sort by controversial or most liked on this forum, or is it just straight numbers, chronological? It does seem like there are no sort features on this at all, which maybe that's for the better, honestly, but yeah. I guess what you would probably do in that case, if it's just chronological post, yeah, it seems like seems like it has devolved into memes and and complaining about Reset Era. Like, seems like somebody got into trolling. So, yeah, I don't think these posts. But this is kind of where any forum that's going to have this many posts is going to boil down to, is you're going to have trolls and haters and just infighting, for lack of a better term.
What adorable, ephemeral
Yeah,
lives.
I'm not sure that these posts change their number. There is clearly likes and lols and other things, but I guess you have to be signed in to see them, and maybe you have to be signed in to sort the posts. What this site, and frankly any site like this though, really runs into as a problem, and I'll stop talking about NeoGAF here in a second, is it's just not helpful or informative for a person like me. Like, I play video games to play video games. I don't play video games to go on forums and talk about not playing video games. I'm gonna lose here. which is fine, whatever.
Power of
Like,
mortality.
it is totally not not worth my time to go to a Reset Era or a NeoGAF or anything like that where it is going to be a text-based forum that would take a ridiculous amount of time to read and stay up with. Frankly, I'm at a point here where I barely even use email, and that is another strange new world in which there may be a future where I'm not even really using email. But yeah, there's a lot of weirdness. I guess we didn't get a single victory, so now we're just looking for Shadowcraft victories, I guess, first, and then maybe we'd re-roll the Portalcraft and Forestcraft victory. Unranked, rotation. Is this Shadowcraft? This is Shadowcraft. Yeah, I kind of have a hard time believing that any real gamer, and this is probably an exaggeration, but I really do have a hard time believing that there are too many real gamers out there who are going to video game forums to discuss things.
Let the duel begin.
If anything, I think maybe
guess you're
comic
looking
book
for a
fans
fight.
should embrace that same attitude also and say real comic book fans don't go on forums discussing comic books. They read comic books. There is a slight difference there in that comic books take maybe 20 minutes to read, where a game takes 60 hours, so you could easily read this month's comic book and then have so much free time on your hands that you do have a time to discuss it. Plus, comic book people go to comic book stores, so they tend to be around their friends and have grown up enjoying comics from the perspective of discussing it with their friends, whereas video gamers don't really discuss games too much except for in school, and at that point fans of almost anything would discuss that at school. But once you're out of that school environment, once you're even in college, I doubt there's too many college kids that are like that have a group of friends that they're talking video games with.
Quiet.
No!
So, yeah. Now, my own addiction, clearly, and I still need to try and find ways of breaking myself of this, and I'm slowly, I think, making some progress. Is getting away from podcasts and listening to, like, Giant Bomb in particular. I did vaguely remember that I have managed to get away from listening to Jim Sterling, who just kind of got incredibly repetitive.
What is not there?
But yeah, I'm still listening to Giant Bomb, and that's potentially some time I could save. I actually need to just find some more like non-video game podcasts to listen to. I'm spending too much time watching YouTube when I should be listening to podcasts and scheduling videos.
She is the
Moving on, Gears Tactics developer Splash Damage has announced plans for a new sci-fi IP. The studio was acquired by Tencent in 2020, which, okay, I guess it's Outcasters. Was a game they announced. I don't know. I'm not sure if Outcasters is really the next game. No, it isn't. It was the last game. That's another thing Video Games Chronicle. That's kind of a problem. And honestly, Video Game Chronicles makes enough frustration for me that if I thought I could find a better source I would go to it, but I had to go probably 500 links deep just to decide Video Games Chronicles was a reasonable news source. And the irony there and the weirdness there is not lost on me, because it is effectively dangerously close to the idea of me ignoring 499 CNNs so I can side with and listen to a well, not even Fox News. It would be something closer to no, I wouldn't say Joe Rogan. What is the other guy? Rush Limbaugh. Yeah, that'd probably be about the best comparison. But at a certain point, I guess I can empathize with the people that listen to Rush Limbaugh and ignore the vast majority of CNN-style, more liberal news sources.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Because if you're just constantly not agreeing with a news site and it's just constantly irritating you, even if you are proven in the long run to be on the wrong side of history, that there isn't really a lot of value to banging your head against the wall and just upsetting yourself. Arguably, I would say CNN kind of does that. Even if you are 100% in lockstep with CNN, their negative, and this is not just CNN, but most mainstream news services, their negative postings and just consistently negative stories is probably not worth your mental health. Let's see.
You won't hold me back.
Interesting. That didn't work. I thought killing it would give me 4, then I could perform a necromancy. But I guess not. Yeah, I guess I have nothing really more to say about this story, so I'll move on. Vampire the Masquerade's Bloodlines 2 was almost cancelled. Paradox was revealed. We had a long review in case we should end the game or run it further, says the CEO, Frederick Lester. I thought, reading this, that it actually was cancelled. This is a very different story. I frankly wouldn't be surprised if it still gets cancelled. There is definitely some weirdness around the large number of vampire games that are coming out at the same time, and Vampires Masquerade 2 potentially has a chance of being very rough around the edges. Now that G4 has actually announced its relaunch and kind of made fun of themselves, admitting they took way too long to actually relaunch. They're starting to. They did a Back for Blood review that I think definitely feels a lot more like X-Play from the Adam Sessler. They're bringing in their new characters, and Morgan Webb is still in no way involved. And Adam Sessler still feels like way too old of a person to be involved with the new G4 at all, but I mean, what can you do? You kind of need his voice, you kind of need his experience. It does feel like they're getting back to reviewing games that might be a little bit more interesting. That being said, they immediately in Back for Blood do a fairly typical thing you see from mainstream video game journalists, in which they complain about Back for Blood being way too difficult, and they're a little bit more honest about it, because they also said that people they played with and they talked and discussed the game with said they actually, other people found it too easy. So it may very well be a case in Back 4 Blood in particular that there's just a widely inconsistent experience based on who you're playing with since it is a group of 4 players. And Back 4 Blood, generally, from the couple sources I've seen reviews on it, does not feel like it has even all the features of Left 4 Dead 2 does, and so it's actually a pretty disappointing product that you might begrudgingly be forced into playing if you're just tired of playing Left 4 Dead 2. I'm not sure if there's really going to be a big audience there, though. Like, it's very possible that Back 4 Blood loses half of its player base in the first 6 weeks and is a dead game fairly quickly.
Oh, are you in need of medicine?
But yeah, I definitely don't like the idea of them just immediately saying, hey, we're Adam Sessler's an old guy, he doesn't have that much time, he needs a baby mode. Particularly for a group game. But actually I think that there might be a better argument that for a 4-player co-op game, baby modes might be a little bit more necessary than your standard single-player game. Because you've got to try and balance out the skill sets between widely different friends. Moving on, Video Game Chronicles says Sony has opened registrations for a chance to buy the PS5 in the US. The company is offering a limited number of direct PlayStation 5 sales this holiday season. Which, yeah, I imagine if you must have a PlayStation 5, you would want to apply to that and try your very best to get one directly. There was a recent survey that pointed out that amongst like video game companies, both I assume console makers and game developers and publishers, Sony was marked as the most hated company in several countries around the world as far as a worldwide survey. Maybe the survey didn't really get that many respondents. Sure, that's always a possibility. But yeah, I definitely could see people being upset with Sony and Sony really failing to curb or correct that upsetness.
Everyone needs an afterlife plan.
Because, yeah, Sony has done a lot to peeve people off. One of the things Sony has done recently, and I think we talked about it a little bit, but I should mention it again, is they're shutting down the ability to purchase games via the Vita and PlayStation 3 stores using a credit card. I'm not sure there's actually any way to purchase anything from those stores. Like, maybe you could go to the online web portal and add points that way. But that particularly then creates a scenario where Japanese games and adult games in particular are effectively dead in the water because they were using the credit card processing as a way of age verification, because that's how it has to be done, I think, in Japan is what I read. So now if you can't do credit card processing, then you can't age verify, then you can't sell the game at all. And there's, I think, a fairly large collection of Vita and PlayStation 3 games that have not just been ported over to a PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5, and it just isn't worth it to really try and port that over.
Let us settle this ere
Nice swordsmanship.
Moving on, Video Game Chronicles says the GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition achievements have leaked, which, since this would be like the first time I've ever played a GTA game, if I were to play these games, I would assume that these achievements are either going to be easier or the exact same achievements that would have existed before. One thing scrolling through these achievements though is it definitely seems like there's more to do in GTA than I thought you really could do. Yeah, there's like these taxi fare missions apparently you can do. You can play as a paramedic. Those are not things I knew you could do. GTA I don't think is unfair to be depicted as a game where you run around first person shooting and stealing cars and things. I think that is kind of the vast majority of what you're encouraged to do, and in the storyline of the levels I think you're encouraged to do that as kind of the main gameplay mechanic. But it does seem like there are other options even in these earlier games. Here we have go 24 hours in game without breaking the law, being wanted, killing or harming anyone. Here's a 100% completion achievement. Barbell curls or bench press at any gym. Yeah. Getting arrested 50 times. Watch the credits to the end. Unlock all weapons. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think the thing you really take from this, though, is these GTA games, though, are old. And I'm not sure many people are willing to play these games, even if this was the first time. Like, I'm in the unique situation where I've never played any of these games before, so I'd be the absolute target audience for playing the trilogy, and I still don't really know if I would actually spend that effort to try and play them and put the time into them. I could easily see myself simply spotlighting the GTA games and then moving on. I could see myself even spotlighting the GTA games as a comparison to say, here's the established sandbox gangster bad guy game that started the entire genre. Let me spotlight it for 5 seconds and then let me move on to a newer game, such as like the Saints Row games or the Saints Row remake even. Yeah. Yeah, and if Rockstar doesn't manage to release a new game, which I don't know if they really care to at all, I have to really wonder if there is a potential case of the of Rockstar just handing over the reins for that style of game to the Saints Row remake or some other company or some other game series. In a lot of ways, Ubisoft's Watch Dogs, I think, would be a kind of great game to play, even if Watch Dogs isn't particularly that good. The Watch Dogs is, I think, maybe a good one to consider. Also, even Crackdown, even if you are playing as the police instead of the bad guys, might be one to consider more. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called The Rift Breaker, which at this rate I don't think we'll be doing any follow list cleanup. Yeah, this looks like a fairly visually polished base building game. It's rated very positively. I don't think I can just immediately dismiss this. $26.99, English full audio, whole bunch of other languages. Like, just looking at the visual and the trailer here. Yeah. This very well is very close to a StarCraft game. And because of that, this definitely deserves a follow. Oops. Well, the website doesn't seem to want to work at the moment. One shadow.
Solemn silence.
A show of bones is a show of sincerity.
Prepare yourself.
Let's see if this Gravekeeper.
Becoming a nuisance.
Necromancy 4.
Quiet. Give me peace.
This is gonna suck if I can't put things on the follow list. No, that worked.
It's time you got
Here we have a game, Time's Up in Tiny Town, which, yeah, it doesn't look like much of anything. Wow, I'm getting sleepy all of a sudden, which is not surprising. $5.99 English only. Here we have a game called Mad Cart, which looks like it's a puzzle game where you're spinning around the carts and shooting at the same time. That may be fairly extreme. It also kind of feels like it might be a mobile game. You have two forms of currency here, and I don't think there's a good reason for that. This also kind of feels like a game that might just be an infinite runner. Yeah. $5.99 single player. It doesn't seem like it has any actual in-app purchases. But yeah, I just don't think there is enough of a game here. It's almost a good start for that kind of game, but it doesn't quite go that way.
Ladies and gentlemen,
You see, I'm only getting stronger.
Hit this one, hit this one, hit this one. That's still not gonna win for me though.
Booting program. Angelic salvation.
Stop right there.
Nice swordsmanship.
Yeah. Really would just have to get lucky, frankly, since this deck really isn't anywhere close to being successful. We'd have to build a new Shadowcraft deck, and we just don't have time with Shadowverse to spend that extra time to build a new deck, since we still have the solo gameplay to also deal with. Video Game Chronicles has an article, Metroid Dread has already outsold nearly every Metroid game in Japan, which, yeah, that I think probably is an indicator of where Nintendo has really just dropped the ball as far as re-releasing its old Metroid games to try to get some more sales and get some hype around that. Like, over the past pandemic time, at least, starting at 2020, there could have been every couple of months a re-release of Metroid, Metroid 2, and the other games being ported and re-released, and they wouldn't even have to sell much. They could just be lead-ups to Metroid Prime 4, and then when Metroid Prime 4 was delayed, they could have been lead-ups to Metroid Dread. So in the first 3 days in Japan, they've sold 86,798 copies. The game data library, which collates Japanese sales data since 1995, Dread smashed the first week sales record for every installment released during this period. Data for the first 3 Metroid games not being included, because that would have been before 1995. Data also suggests that in just 3 days, Dread has outsold the lifetime sales of nearly every Metroid game in Japan, excluding Fusion in 2003 and Hunters, and the original Metroid. Data for Super Metroid and Metroid 2 isn't available. And see, almost certainly part of the reason for that is that there's just so many more gamers now in Japan than there were then in the past. So yeah, Metroid Dread here has apparently in its first week sold 86,798, whereas Fusion sold half of that, and in its lifetime sold 155,528. Other M, half of that in the first week, and Dread has already beaten it. Prime has already beaten it. Its lifetimes, sales, Zero Mission. If anything, what's interesting is when you look at the lifetime sales of some of these games, they are very similar until you get to something like Samus Returns and the Metroid Prime 2 Echoes game. Whereas Metroid Prime 1 still sold well. So Echoes kind of did badly. Metroid series has historically struggled to sell in Japan, but Dread was supported by a strong marketing campaign, including prominent TV advertisements. And I think, particularly in Japan, you probably do just have to advertise things on TV a lot more than you would think. But it certainly goes to show you that if Nintendo only cares about Japanese sales and only cares about its Japanese audience, which it probably does, like most Japanese companies, why would they care about Metroid as a series? It's historically been a loser in Japan, and that's all they care about. Now, arguably, at some point, the Japanese xenophobia in their capitalism is going to have to break, and they're going to have to realize that, hey, we need the Western markets to make these games sell and make profits on them. But they certainly aren't going to go into that realization willingly. Like, it is willful ignorance and blindness to reality that a lot of Japanese business is done on. So yeah. Excuse me. I don't know why I'm sneezing so much. I guess what this is probably going to come down to is the idea of, now that it is sold well in Japan, there is a higher chance that Metroid will get more funding and care given to it, and this might, instead of potentially Metroid Prime 4 being underfunded and taking forever, maybe they'll put a new infusion of cash into it and make sure that a theoretical Metroid Prime 5 starts development now, if it isn't already in development, and that the Metroid series is either going to see more remakes of the first games, because one of the Metroid games is a remake of the first game, which, yeah, that is fairly logical that you should go in that direction.
Prepare yourself.
At this point, there probably should be a re-release of the remake of the first game, because I don't think it actually was on the Switch, and then a remake of the second game, third game. Try to kind of tighten up the Metroid series. I have said that perhaps instead of focusing on Samus Aran, there should be a spin-off game that is actually more just focused on Metroids existing in general, or and then you can make twice as many games. I also wouldn't be surprised though if Nintendo is just going to be stubborn and still not really support Metroid.
You see, I'm only getting stronger.
Just out of stubbornness.
That's hot.
I suspect a lot of decisions made in Japan are very much just made on a single person's whim and doesn't have anything to do with committees or numbers or feedback or anything like that.
They don't kill you first.
For instance, I heard a story that Shigeru Miyamoto banned Mario doing the V for Victory pose that was what he did in Super Mario 64, and since that all the Mario games have had him do different kinds of animations whenever he gets a star or an item, usually a star. And it wasn't until Odyssey that they started cycling between some of the previous poses, and you can very rarely see the V for Victory, but it is almost never done there. I wouldn't be surprised if that actually was banned by Shigeru Miyamoto because of in his own heart,
Now you've done it.
dislike of, I guess, that pose, which is, it is done by younger Japanese people when taking pictures all the time, so it's not like Japanese people hate the V for Victory pose, but it would kind of make sense too, because I think V for Victory is probably a US military thing from World War II, so effectively the Japanese people, when they're doing the V for Victory sign, are basically doing a propaganda motion from World War II, and Shigeru Miyamoto is old enough to still be upset about the events of World War II between the United States and Japan. If V for Victory is not from the United States, it's probably from the UK. I think it might be from the UK, come to think of it, and propaganda posters there. So I don't think the UK was particularly on the side of Japan in World War II either.
You must die.
I wouldn't be surprised if it has nothing to do with the war, though. I wouldn't be surprised if it's just Shigeru Miyamoto thinks it's feminine, and because it usually is girls posing for photos that do the V for Victory, not really guys. So I wouldn't be surprised if it is straight up that he didn't want Mario to look feminine in his eyes. Anyways, I really am rambling here. Video Game Chronicles has next week's free Epic Games Store title being announced. It's Among the Sleep, will replace Stubbs the Zombie in Rebel Without a Pulse and the Paladin's Epic Pack. Yep. So Epic Games Store is still giving away a game seemingly on a weekly basis. I didn't realize it was that often.
But make it fashion.
I definitely have not been checking it on a weekly basis every time. The Xbox Series X and S has cleared 100,000 sales in Japan and is on track to beat the Xbox One, according to Video Games Chronicle, according to Microsoft. Which, yeah, I definitely feel like the Xbox One had 115,000 lifetime sales. Definitely feel like the Xbox Series of consoles is doing better. Some of that almost certainly has to do with it just being smaller, and smaller in particular and relatively to the PlayStation 5. A lot of it almost certainly has to do with the PlayStation 5 not really being available.
Born to be fabulous.
But I also think at the very least Microsoft is saying the right things. They have kind of yet to do the right things as far as attracting a Japanese gaming audience, but they're saying the right things, at least about talking about working with Japanese companies and possibly even acquiring a Japanese company.
I lowballed you.
You wouldn't.
Video Game Chronicles has an article here. Just days after its unveiling, Call of Duty's anti-cheat system has reported leaks. Cheaters are said to be working to crack Ricochet. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case, although how it got leaked is kind of a question. There is also, I believe this is the one that is going to be a kernel level, like, anti-cheat thing, which I've definitely gone into the rant before that anti-cheat software has no business being in the kernel level at all.
Wait, not yet.
Prepare yourself.
At some point, if we're gonna have to create a API to allow some kind of kernel activity or monitoring where the kernel monitors cheating and reports back to a software, we may have to do something like that. Particularly Windows and Microsoft may decide to do something like that, but like there's no business to be putting your own content, your own code in the kernel. Linus Torvalds of Linux would never allow that to happen. I'd never be happy about that happening if it did happen.
I'm coming. Detestable. Detestable.
They've broken through our ranks.
Detestable.
Attack.
Detestable. Aren't you popular?
I suppose at a certain point we probably are going to have to make a decision as consumers too, whether we're willing to let something install what is effectively spyware on your computer just to play the game.
Done for.
And particularly for Call of Duty, I think the answer for me in particular is no. I can't really afford somebody adding a potential vulnerability to my computer and breaking my computer, which there's been no stories of this actually happening, but I'm not sure I'm willing to even risk it just to play one game. I have to balance the risk against playing all other games. That's not to say that I blanketly refuse to play anything with DRM. I'm sure I've, without even paying attention to it, played several games with DRM, third-party DRM, or fairly even low-level DRM and not even noticed it. And Steam itself is DRM, so obviously I'm playing some DRM.
Barrier is impenetrable.
But yeah, I don't think I'd add even more to play Call of Duty. Honestly, I don't think I'll probably ever get around to playing Modern Warfare, Call of Duty games, those kind of military first-person shooters ever. Anyways, I don't even think they may be on my wish list, but honestly, if somebody was to gift me the game, I would be fairly slow to decide to play it.
You in need of medicine?
Yeah, I'm much closer to playing a visual novel or a JRPG instead.
Open wide.
Let's see. Video Game Chronicles has an article here. Animal Crossing is getting a $25 Happy Home Paradise expansion next month. I think we'd already talked about this, but they may not have mentioned the price. Here, Story of Seasons, Mineral Town has its trophies now listed for PlayStation 4, if that interests anybody. Gamatsu has the Genshin's Impact version 2.2 update now being available. I definitely, speaking of mobile games, since like every stream now I'm basically talking about a Destiny Child, like just because I'm enjoying it.
Open wide.
But yeah, I'm definitely in a weird position with the cell phone game Destiny Child that I play, in that they've delayed their update, so there's just no new content. So I'm getting the thing I definitely wanted, which is a break to just save up some resources and move into a better position where I can have the premium currency saved up and save up some gold, save up things like that. But it is weird to basically have nothing to do. Even at that though, I'm still doing the dailies, and the dailies still take probably an hour every day to do.
None can pierce my shield.
And that would be in that
Conflict.
zombie apocalypse scenario if the internet did go down, something that I would really regret, even if my internet was down for a couple days, because yeah, that's something that, even though the game does technically play itself, you still put a lot of time and effort into it, and it's not something I would want to just see fall apart.
Prepare yourself.
I mustn't give in.
Let's see. Gamatsu has the Famitsu review scores, and here's Demon Slayer, and they're showing his earrings a little bit better. Which I assume these are probably kind of magical talisman earrings. I think we had already talked about these review scores, so it's not much. Blue Reflection Second Light getting 32 out of 40. They've typed 30 here, but that's wrong. It's 40, it's always 40. For reviewers being able to give anywhere between a 0 and a 10. There's probably fewer zeros out of 40s than there are 40 out of 40s, and there's only about 5 or 6 40 out of 40s. And then Demon Slayer gets 33 out of 40, so Demon Slayer 1 point better than Blue Reflection, but both of those very reasonably good reviews. And yeah, I would definitely still consider her Famitsu
How could you not understand?
a trustworthy reviews site. The one thing I guess they do more than anything is by having a system where 4 different people are reviewing the games, is it gets rid of any potential bias of one specific reviewer And it kind of highlights the ridiculousness of some of the other systems that have existed
Well then.
as far as how games are getting reviewed. Let's see. Could summon 2 leeches and do 4 damage.
What was beckoned?
What did I want gold again?
More!
Yeah, unless I can win before this guy can hit me multiple times, I'm probably lost. Gamatsu says Microids has announced Joe and Mac Caveman Ninja for consoles and PC, which Joe and Mac is an old series, but this is obviously a new take on it. Here you've got a cave woman tied up by what looks like a plant monster. And yeah, you've got some cavemen. The Caveman Ninja subtitle's pretty weird. This looks like this might be a fine game, fine callback. And this is one of those examples of a game that's going to have more relevance to it. So if somebody was to try and make a game that looked like this, I'd say, well, in general, this looks fairly polished on the heads-up display. It's got a score system. It doesn't have any like premium currency or anything. It's nicely visually polished. The character is weird. I'm not sure if this is a helper character or a bad guy character. Well, clearly these two are bad guy characters. The tied-up girl may potentially get complained about by some people. That would be something to consider.
Beckoned?
Let's see.
The
This.
uncharted desert awaits.
Life is too dear. You are forgiven.
But because a game like this is relevant, because it's based on previous games in a series, getting something like this makes a lot more sense, because then I can look up the history and potentially talk about the history, and I can get previous Joe and Mac games if there are any previous Joe and Mac games on Steam. That's certainly something we should check out. Assuming this actually comes to Steam. Let's see, Joe and Mac. Originally NES and Super NES games. Doesn't seem like there are any Steam versions. So, let's see, ports. Seems like there really was only one game in the series, but it was ported to a lot of things. But yeah, there doesn't seem to be a sequel that was ever made. Overall reception, pretty good. Yeah, there is a Joe and Mac 2. And apparently there's a Congo's Caper. So there is a series here. You know, I have a lot of caveman games in general. I guess these have been allowed on Switch Online, so that's where they're really coming back from, as they made some money selling Switch ports, and now they're gonna try and I guess, reboot the series of 3 games. That's interesting, I suppose. Somewhat. Not super interesting, but a little interesting. Yeah. Since there aren't really any old versions of the game that have been ported, though, playing the remake would be the only game I would cover in that case, and then I could talk about the history, but not from a personal perspective since I never played any of those games. And you could certainly make the argument that a lot of these old games are starting to scrape the bottom of the barrel as far as nostalgia goes. And a lot of old games are really not worth bringing back or talking about. So that is another thing to consider. Moving on, Guardian Force Saturn Tribute Western Limited and Collector's Edition pre-orders open up on October 17th. Which, yeah, there's nothing really to mention there other than the date, I guess.
Open wide. Open wide.
No!
Yeah, let's go ahead and end the turn there. Gamatsu has the same story. The Gears Tactics studio Splash Damage is developing an original sci-fi game. They are now hiring for several different positions in London, which I suppose it's probably a little unfair to just immediately talk about Brexit when you talk about a London-based video game company, but it probably is a consideration too. I would think that it would be harder and less appealing, certainly, to move to London at this point to work for a video game company than it would have been a few years ago.
You look kinda haunted.
Before Brexit happened.
Aren't you popular?
Open wide.
An opportunity for growth.
Although I'm not sure there ever was a large amount of, particularly United States, Western countries that are more west of London and UK that were, I don't know if there was a lot of programmers trying to get to London.
Someone as beautiful as her could never understand.
I will roughly misquote someone when they described a YouTuber when they described the UK and said it is roughly a kind of awful country to go and visit. That if you want the experience, you spend a couple days in London and you spend a lot of time drinking in pubs, but once you get outside of the rich London area, that it's a lot of trailer trash, I guess would be the best word. It's a lot closer to poor southern states outside of London than you would think, and there's it's never been a kind of like Tokyo type country. And in all fairness, I think that's probably true in Japan too, is that Tokyo is the center point of all commerce, and if you were to go to Japan and go to a small town village, it really isn't a place where you would want to visit much. There are definitely some tourist attractions, but once you get past those tourist attractions, either outside of London, in the UK, or in Japan, you quickly realize that there's not a lot going on. And if anything, that might very well be an indication that worldwide megacities are becoming more and more the thing that divides people's experiences. If you are living in a megacity, you have a lot of convenience, but if you're living outside of a megacity, you're highly likely to be severely disenfranchised. I feel like that's probably the case in the United States too. If you are living in New York or LA, which are way too expensive places to live, but it is the center of all opportunity, and opportunity is the main thing you want in any place you live. Is you want the opportunity to get employed and educated and improve your lot in life. And if you're living in a tiny little rural area, maybe you'll get calmness and stability, but you won't get opportunity almost ever. So you will be the farmer working the farm that your parents worked, or you'll be the factory worker working at the same factory your parents worked at. There's nothing better. You'll go to the exact same college that your parents went to, and you'll be taught by the exact same teachers that your teachers were taught, the exact same things that your parents were taught. So yeah, I suppose there can't just be a mandate that everybody live in a mega city, but we might just naturally see more people moving towards something like that. Or there might, I mean, it could be a mandate, certainly, if it's just impossible to ship things to smaller towns. There, in the United States, I think have been a fairly high number of small towns that just get smaller and smaller, or relatively get smaller. They may actually be getting bigger in population, but relatively by percentage of the total population of the country getting smaller. Yeah. Anyways, I'm talking about opportunity and economics again instead of video games. Gamatsu says Where Cards Fall for Switch and PC launches November 4th, which it's kind of funny that there was the dice game and now we have a playing card game. And that dice game came and went. Lost in Random was, I believe, the name of it. But this has had like no advertisement so far, this game Where Cards Fall. In all fairness, this doesn't look like it's actually a game that's particularly based around cards so much. It seems like you have cards that make buildings and make platforms, and it's more of an art style than an actual puzzle mechanic. So yeah, it kind of feels like it's more of a gimmick than anything else, and the actual story here is going to have very little to do with cards. Which may be fine. It may have a good story, and the card mechanic may be just the thing that makes it stand out. It's from a publisher, Snowman, and developer called The Game Band. It first launched on Apple Arcade in September 2019. Which, yeah. I'm not sure Apple Arcade even has reviews, but Gamatsu is not linking to them. It doesn't link to Apple Arcade pages. You may not even be able to see Apple Arcade pages online. Apple, I suppose, could also dry up the internet that way if all of a sudden everything is going through walled garden Play stores and there aren't even websites for games. That would be weird. Certainly. I guess we'll keep an eye out for Where Cards Fall when it actually comes out. We don't really have to do anything now.
Are you in need of medicine?
I'm definitely just banging my head against the wall here with this. Like, not succeeding at all. Gamatsu has the Call of Duty Vanguard Zombies reveal trailer, which, yeah. I'm not even sure which game Call of Duty Vanguard is.
Okay,
I'm not sure that the zombies modes in Call of Duty games really make sense. Alright, I got a free concession there.
Let's do that again.
Finally. And since that is all I needed, we can now just play Portal Craft or Forest Craft and hope for more victories much quicker. There is definitely a question in my mind as I just think about it now. Do I even want to play a military first-person shooter game with zombies in it? I don't know. I mean, at a certain point, maybe I would prefer to play Back 4 Blood over that. But would I want a single-player zombie shooter game? I don't think so. I enjoyed the Halloween expansion in the Borderlands games, but if Borderlands was 100% zombies, I don't think I'd find that enjoyable. Yeah. There's just not really a chocolate and peanut butter thought in my head that playing old World War II style guns on and shooting zombies makes sense. Zombie movies in general tend not to focus around a military being able to mow them down. You very rarely even see a sequence where somebody has a machine gun and can mow down the zombies.
This will be over quick.
There's our puppy to game.
Let's see. This is gonna be a risk doing this, but I'll take it.
I'll make your taste buds
Watch as
quiver.
I wind and wind.
Yeah, I imagine if I was gonna play a zombie game, I probably would want more modern weapons or even fictional weapons that were like science fiction in the future. I don't think I want military gear per se. I don't think I want military movement and attitude when fighting zombies. Like if Doom, for instance, and the Doom guy was a hardline military guy who always followed orders, that doesn't sound interesting at all. That sounds incredibly boring.
Hold still.
Watch as I wind and wind.
Moving on, Battlefield 2042 Hazard Mode revealed. Which, yeah.
This holy blade shall
Again.
bring salvation.
Military, this time in the future game that doesn't really visually appeal to me. I think it is kind of nice to see them on some snow walls. But that's about the only thing that looked interesting. These big pink images are supposed to have links over them, but yep. This whiteness is about the only thing that even looks slightly attractive to me. The rest of this looks like it's mostly just trailer bait stuff and it's pre-rendered images, and the actual gameplay doesn't look really any different than anything else I've seen as far as these military games. Yeah, they just don't really appeal to me.
Oh, guinea pigs, where are you?
Okay.
Begin.
Yeah, we're gonna have to
Design
move
lies with you.
really fast.
I have failed.
1,
Hold
2,
Watch as
3
I wind and wind.
in the turn. Here we have a game on Steam called Blast Brigade versus the Evil Legion of Dr. Creed, which this to me sounds like it's probably a player versus player game. If not, it's a platforming shooting game where you switch between characters, which maybe that's what it is. Early access, single player only, third party EULA, $17.99, English full audio, bunch of other languages. Now, I don't see a guarantee here that this is a good game, but I don't see anything really limiting its chances either. The only thing I would say is the developer and the publisher is kind of no names, but that doesn't inherently mean it's bad. So that does definitely deserve a follow. Here.
Monolith terminal. Activate dimensional startup.
Sleep.
Reforming dimension. Commencing transmission.
The setback.
I mustn't give in.
Interesting.
Hold still.
No!
I don't know what happened there, but that helped me. Here we have a game on Steam called Heartless Dark, which looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter game. It's too dark, though. It seems to half imply that you're supposed to play it with the audio. No, they're telling you to turn the sound on with the video trailer here. Nope. Definitely seems like it's suffering from dark screenshot syndrome. $11.99, English full audio, French, Russian, and Chinese. I think you can kind of easily dismiss this one. Here we have a game called A Little Golf Journey, which looks like an asset flip game of no real interest. Maybe it's golf. You would kind of think you could asset flip a golf game fairly easily, and yet I haven't seen a lot of people try it. I think golf is just not that popular in general, so there's not a good reason to do this. $17.99, a whole bunch of languages. That is way too expensive, so we will dismiss that. So you play with this first, and then you do one of these, and then I guess we'll evolve here.
I'll make your taste buds quiver.
Yeah, I just have to assume that golf games are just not that popular, and that's gonna be the limiting factor.
Well then.
Gamatsu says Skull the Hero Slayer for PS4, Xbox One, and Switch launches October 21st. A lot of games coming out like within less than a week of their release date. And if this game had been announced before, I definitely don't recognize it. So at the very least, they haven't been promoting it that much. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with this game. Well, it seems like you take skulls and that switches your fight style, which if this was a Nintendo game, you wouldn't be swapping skulls, you'd be swapping hats or Kirby eating people. And I guess this might very well be a case of a game that that is going for that Kirby trick. I'm not sure if there's a lot of demand for that Kirby trick. But yeah, this looks really interesting. It's kind of crazy that it would not be announced. Apparently it already is on Steam. It came out February 18th, 2020, so I guess there is a definite case here that I've potentially just forgotten about it and missed it.
Feel free to call on me again. Oh, my beloved Nava.
Yep. Yeah, here's the game on Steam, and it is on my wish list, so it just came out, and then I did the right thing. Checked to see if it had enough reviews to be relevant. Checked to see if it had positive reviews. Now it's on the wish list. It's questionable how much I'm really planning on spending for like a Black Friday November sale, winter sale on Steam. And it's questionable whether I'll remember this game when that sale happens. Historically, this has been as low as $12.59, which is pretty low considering it's only been out for a brief time. Maybe, I suppose, a year. So I really wouldn't expect it to be half off even.
I see that you carry out your mission.
Alright. Let's see.
Begin.
Tell me what to do with my like this.
Yeah. Probably should have evolved this guy and then tried to get a bunch of health using that, actually. Let's see. The game, The Invincible, has been delayed to 2022. Teaser trailer now available. This looks to me like it is maybe a point-and-click adventure type game, or maybe a survival game. It looks very visually polished, but I'm not sure what the actual gameplay mechanic is.
Impossible.
Kinda could be a walking simulator for what it is.
You're in good hands.
Let's see. Yeah, I'm really not sure. It's apparently based on a cult classic book or movie, but I've never heard of The Invincible, so I would assume it is a book. Remember, we have that Vertigo. There is that Vertigo game that is also in development.
Call on me again.
Yeah. Just no way to win here. Let's see. A Hat in Time physical edition for the PlayStation 4 launches November 12th. I've already covered this game, so it's kind of ridiculous that it's coming out for the PS4 only, and that really highlights a lack of support for the PlayStation 5. This is an old game. It almost certainly should be for the PS4 and PS5. And I guess you would have backwards compatibility. So that is a consideration too, I guess, but
What adorable, ephemeral lives.
Power of mortality.
yeah. Yeah, once again, I'm immediately getting tired. Let's just, I guess, try Forest Craft Victory. I don't think we're really going to win there. Let's see. Into the Pit has a gameplay overview trailer. Retro first-person shooter roguelite due out October 19th. Yeah. I kind of feel like this game was announced before. Yeah, I vaguely recall seeing this either on Steam or in a trailer. It's a little too neon for my liking. And yeah, it doesn't particularly strike me as something that would interest me. What's funny is, if this was a BioShock game and you were going through a story with the two-handed spell casting, I'd be willing to go with that a little bit. Although I kind of want a gun in one hand and magic in the other, like BioShock. But just by the name Into the Pit, I assume that this is more of an arena-based game, and there is very little story, if any, that exists, and it's just too neon and too demonic for my taste. I don't mind playing a game like Doom or a demonic game like even Succubus, but it feels like that is the default in arena-based shooters a little too often. So you'd have to convince me a little bit more as to why would I want to play a modern game like Into the Pit versus playing something like Hexen, which is also a older, more relevant, demonic looking arena shooter. Let's see, Treasures of Aegean launches November 11th, which is nothing. I mean, there might be a game here, but I question it severely. What's funny is this kind of looks like a game you would expect to play on an Apple II almost. If your memory was very confused and you thought very old like Windows DOS games look like this. This has a lot of cutscenes and pictures here, making it seem like you're mostly not going to play it. That was a lot of images too. Quite a lot of images. But yeah, the actual gameplay does have that feel of it's a platformer much like Prince of Persia, but there's just no enemies there. And maybe from that nostalgic point of view, there might be a reason to play this, but I question that seriously. I feel like I'd probably play a game like this and then say, oh yeah, there's nothing here. It looks very pretty. But that might work too, to say, hey, this game looks very pretty, but in reality, it is not not a viable product because there's no actual interactivity that you would come to expect in a video game. Let's see. Speaking of old games, Limited Run Games is bringing Quake to PlayStation 5 with a physical version. I think they had another tweet that they were bringing something else over. But I guess maybe not. Maybe it was just Quake. Limited Run Games really living up to their name as far as making limited runs of usually more niche games like Fatal 12 here than Quake. Quake, I guess, if it comes down to a question of would you prefer Quake to not come to PlayStation 4, or would you like to see it come out in limited run, you'd say limited run.
Mankind's hatred is a curse.
Right. So we evolved this, and now we have just like 5 characters, 5 guys with Bane.
Talk more later.
Hey, let's play.
Let's see. Gematsu has the Famitsu sales updated for 10.4 to 10.10. Let's see. Metroid Dread, Far Cry 6 for the PS4, and then Far Cry 6 for the PS5, topping the top 3 marks. You can see there's double the number of sales for the PS4 version versus the PS5 version of Far Cry 6, and there's over double the number of sales for Metroid Dread. So basically everybody in Japan has a Switch, and yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Hey, let's play.
Let's see. Play this.
Hey, let's play.
Play this.
Hey, let's
Play this.
Hey, let's play.
Then return. Let's see. Doki Doki Literature Club Plus made its debut in the 8th spot, and then Shuin no Verche Error Salvation from Idea Factory made it into the 15th spot. I didn't even see any advertisement for this game. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild Plus Expansion Pass is I guess new, and it's in the 23rd spot, which probably indicates everybody already had Breath of the Wild. Astria Ascending in the 24th spot, that's pretty low. And then Splatoon 2 and Octo Expansion in the 28th spot. There's some Nintendo first-party titles here that are pretty low. And then hardware sales now includes the Switch OLED model, which significantly outsold the Switch itself. But yeah, I think that probably indicates something.
Save yourselves.
This.
The uncharted desert awaits.
I'm gonna lose here, but whatever. So if we take the general assumption that everybody has a Switch, then we have to assume that 138,000 of those previous Switch owners and have bought a new OLED model. Which, in all fairness, with the Joy-Con drift, there is a decent argument to just getting a new Switch instead of trying to mail the Joy-Cons to get repaired, which will take forever. You could get a new Switch, mail your old Joy-Cons for repair, and then in the meantime have to use the new model. I don't know what the transferability really is between an old Switch and a new OLED model is also, so you might just have to struggle to transfer your games over. I saw a kind of review / teardown of the internet speeds in particular on the Switch, and for lack of a better description, it seems like the servers that the Nintendo Switch connects to has incredibly low bandwidth and low connection speeds, like to the point where you're getting like less than 100 megabits per second download, at least according to this review. So they were testing out the Ethernet landline connection and saying, yeah, there's really no reason for it to even exist, because Nintendo's servers just are incredibly slow and installing games are incredibly slow. And I bet that is probably the case for regardless of what your own home internet service provider is. I bet you still are taking forever to download things, compared particularly to like how Microsoft's and Sony's servers, I imagine, are much faster. Is there anything else to say here? Well, combined, the Switch has sold nearly 170,000 in a week, whereas the PlayStation 5 sold 13,000, the Switch Lite than you probably would add with the Switches to bump that number up anymore. And then you have the Microsoft Xbox Series X selling nearly 3,000. And if you combine the PlayStation 5 with the PlayStation 5 Digital Edition, you're getting up to like nearly 35,000. But PlayStation 4 and Xbox Series X are not doing particularly good. And the 2DS LL is still hanging on. So we may see a consistent uptick in sales of Switches now for the next couple of months, just because of the OLED model, which that's very much, I suspect, what Nintendo wanted. Gamatsu has the Neptunia rail shooter Dimension Tripper Neptunia Top Nep being announced for PC. This is a obvious spin-off of the Neptunia series, which they've done this before. This is probably not much of a game from the looks of it. I wouldn't be surprised if this is less than $5 or free.
I'm a prisoner of this world's whims.
Yeah, the creative director of Rocksteady Games, who worked on Batman Arkham, which I guess he means in that the Batman Arkham series in general, is promoting this Suicide Squad game, which apparently is coming out in the DC fandom. So, yeah. I expect we'll see I suspect we'll see a decent amount of that. So both of these will have the breezy elf effect.
You shall fall.
But this does not double. It's not stackable, so having two of these on the field was actually pointless. Let's see. GameDeveloper.com has an OMIDA analysis, which countries make the most revenue from esports. Check that out if you're interested. Seems to me like China's mostly the victor here, predicting up to 2025. So in reality, you really just should look at these four at most. US being the second esports revenue, and then South Korea, and then Germany, and then UK. Seems fairly consistent. But there's a lot of projection here and assumption, particularly with China, because there's a lot of governmental interference that's happening around esports and games in general, that I don't think is being considered there. And this is the kind of analysis and prognostication that happens that pushes people to try and do business with China when there really is no business to be done with China, it seems, in my opinion. Game Developer has this article. Activision has created a kernel-level anti-cheat system for Call of Duty. The system, dubbed Ricochet, also incorporates server-side and back-end tools. So it is a kernel-level thing. I had seen that, and I thought that was the case. They also have the story of Reset Era being acquired by a Swedish media company. I imagine this will probably be the last time we ever have to talk about Reset Era. And in all fairness, the last dozen or so times, and pretty much every time I've ever talked about Reset Era, is from the perspective of they're doing something stupid or saying something stupid at Reset Era.
Another pointless path.
Hey, let's play.
Interesting. So the Breezy Elf ability was wasted there. I didn't realize it was going to return it back to the hand. See, GameDeveloper.com says a Finnish mobile studio called Papakaya breaks cover with a 3.1 million Supercell investment.
Should I drop this lightning bolt?
I don't know what they mean by break cover. This is the first I've heard of this company, so maybe this is the first announcement. It's made by industry veterans Drusilla Hollanda and Jonas Vinimi. I don't know if I pronounced that right. It emerged from stealth mode, as if that is really something. I suppose that there is probably a point where more in-depth business analysis and discussion should be taken around the fact that there's a lot of like done in secret first stage investment that happens for some companies, which that is something that should just be downright illegal and may in some cases actually be illegal, because the idea of only letting your friends in and cronyism to invest in a company is antithetical to the theory of a free market, which I don't really believe there is a free market. But if you're going to just give up even the first limp-wristed attempt to maintain and establish a free market, then you're creating something very different. Now, arguably, I've argued that as far as investments, there really should be severe limitations on who can invest and where a 401k, for instance, and a retirement plan actually invests in, and that investing in companies really is just gambling. But all of that being said, I still think everyone who is qualified to invest should be given an equal opportunity to invest, and it shouldn't be who you know. It's basically insider trading, investing in the company before the initial public release, being an initial founding supporter of a company. Moving on, Sledgehammer Games opens UK studio to support Call of Duty development. We already talked about that. The former Raiders coach John Gruden is being removed from Madden 22 after an email scandal. And then subtitles, but his emails, which I know that subtitle's not informative or helpful. I didn't know coaches were actually in the NFL games. Let's see. They're saying his emails were racist and homophobic comments. I've seen people use the whole list of racist, homophobic, misogynist comments. They just go down all the ists they can possibly think of. The actual things said in his email don't seem to be good, and it seems to be that his inappropriate work emails, which even at the time of being made were inappropriate and not professional, and you should have known to never put those things in direct emails. They were being reviewed by a kind of review for trying to find out and catch other people for doing inappropriate things. So he just got caught in the net effectively, which is not to excuse his behavior in any way and his comments in any way. In reality, though, this is what football is, to my understanding. And maybe I don't understand football that much, but yeah, when the microphones aren't on, when they think they're not going to be heard, everybody involved in football, coaches in particular, makes crude, inappropriate comments and are not professional, good people saying kind things. Football is a game of aggression, and even if you're a football manager and just running a business, or just some back-end support management person, you're still in this environment of aggression and encouraged to act with aggression. You don't become a professional football coach if you have not lived a life that has been full of an aggressive attitude, and that's really where I think a lot of this comes from, is really aggressive attitudes and a push to kind of attack other people. So yeah, so goes John Gruden, the Raiders coach, from the video game, which honestly they shouldn't even bother to remove him. There's no reason to censor something. Even if Madden 22 is not out yet, there's kind of no reason to say, hey, if he was a coach in the seasons that are going to be covered in this game, we should just leave him in just to be historically accurate. Because once EA goes down that avenue of removing people from history and that kind of cancel culture mentality of erasing people from history, they're never going to be able to stop. They're going to have to erase so many football players. I don't think there's anything in John Gruden's emails that he got caught putting in print that has not been said by a significant portion of players and coaches amongst the NFL. And of course they're not going to back up anybody or support anybody, but yeah, EA's part in this could have been very limited and very small if they wanted it to be, instead of proactively saying they're going to remove him. But I guess also removing a coach is probably pretty easy, because I bet it doesn't really change the game much at all. I bet it doesn't change the game at all, really. What is a much more controversial story here on GameDevelopers.com, I think, and should be probably talked about more, is Mercury Steam defending leaving developers out of the Metroid Dread credits. Several developers have spoken up about not being properly credited on Metroid Dread. Mercury Steam says its policy is working as intended. This almost certainly is one of these nasty policies which says if you are not still working for the company when the game is released, they won't put you in the credits. We've seen a couple of companies saying this. Sources speaking to the site confirmed that they were not included in the game's credit, and thanks to a policy of not crediting developers who worked on the games for less than 25% of the game development. Which, yeah, that's ridiculous. You should pretty much credit anybody who put even a single line of code in there. And if you really want to bend over backwards to eliminate somebody, then you should have to bear the Mercury Steam should have to bear the burden of paying somebody else and crediting someone else to program and replace that programming that they don't want to credit. And honestly, even at that, that's kind of inappropriate in my opinion, and you should probably credit somebody even if they worked on the game and then none of their code actually made it to the final product. This is literally the easiest thing anybody could do, is simply put their names in the credits. It's not even like it's a movie credit where you're getting a percentage of the sales or our SAG-AFTRA paycheck. Here you have a 3D artist, Roberto Mejia, who confirmed he was not credited on the game even though he worked on it for 8 months. Seemingly indicating that they didn't consider his contribution to be significant, is the quote here from GameSpot, I guess. Yeah. That's really not what you want as far as drama around your game that just launched and succeeded and sold very well in Japan. And maybe in Japan particularly, it definitely feels like a Japanese system in which they just abuse and discredit their employees. So maybe Nintendo is more than happy with them not crediting things, but probably not. It's a really dumb story to have come out when it could have been 100% all good news around Metroid Dread, and now it's less than 100% all good news. Kotaku also put out a article that seemingly just downright endorsed pirating and emulating Metroid Dread because of how incredibly underpowered the Switch is compared to, apparently they can just now emulate Switch games right out of the box day one. Kotaku has pretty much run out of steam as being a legitimate video game news source in, I think, most people's eyes. It stopped being a lot of it stopped really being a legitimate news source in a lot of people's eyes many years ago. But even the mainstream video game journalist people seem to no longer really want to support Kotaku. I've, in at least the last 3 or 4 months, noticed that there's been considerably less retweeting and reposting of articles from Kotaku on things on sites like GameDevDeveloper.com or Gamatsu, as it was in the past named. Yeah, I would just say Kotaku has fallen from grace, and they seem to be fairly desperate just to get clicks. Which that may just be the way that most mainstream video game sites go. I think every day there's a whole new generation of people that realize that most mainstream video game sites are, particularly when they're doing reviews, are just completely out of line and disconnected with what the readers are interested in. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see bigger, more successful Facebook groups talking about games and reviewing games instead of websites. And of course, like G4 may come back into popularity and suck a lot of oxygen out of that discussion. And maybe a lot of people will go back to G4 for their reviews. Honestly, if Famitsu had an English publishing hand, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people eventually started just reading their articles. There might literally be a Famitsu USA, and I'm just not aware of it. Moving on, we seemingly have just games now on Steam. So here we have a game called Into the Loop, which looks like nothing. $5.09, whole bunch of languages. Here we have a game called Deep Rune, which looks too pixely to look that interesting to me. Yeah, this again is one of those games that if this actually came out 20 years ago, this would probably sell really well. But coming out now, It feels like too much of a throwback to be actually interesting, and too ugly by modern standards to be visually appealing. Side-scrolling adventure.
We shall, through moments both fleeting and eternal.
$4.49 English full audio. Something like this might work on a mobile phone game. Like, in that case, more content might justify playing this. Here it seems like you're using the mouse cursor a lot to click and drag a character. So yeah, I could see playing a game like that on a cell phone because you just have nothing nothing better that is consistently interesting to play.
My thunderbolts shall guide you, if they don't kill you first.
Oh, the fluffy hug! Too much party, not enough business. Let us conclude.
If I could do just 3 damage.
I am a
Let's
prisoner
see.
of this world's
Next we have a
whims.
game here just called Anime Tetris, which I think that tells us we can pretty much ignore it.
I am a
I'm
prisoner
confused
of
as
this
to
world's whims.
how you're even getting the anime in here. This looks like a very weird Tetris game to say the least. Do you get past the line, I guess, and when you fill in the lines you get a picture? It's not a terrible thought for a Tetris game that you're just constantly going up higher and higher, and when you hit certain levels you get another picture unlocked. But the problem with a Tetris game in general is that you're so focused on playing the game, you'd never really be able to look at the images until later, and the images are just going to be distractions. I still don't know what these little tags here are supposed to represent.
Oh, lamentable fate.
At least they're trying to do something new. Anime Tetris is 59 cents.
I pray
It
that you will be
sports
freed
a whole
from
bunch of
suffering.
languages here. Of course it would. Here we have Sphere Flying Cities, which is mostly negative already, so I think we can pretty much dismiss it. Which is a shame because it looks visually polished enough to potentially look like something. Seems like it is just a city simulator game, though. $15.29 English full audio. We have better city simulators, and I don't know if having a sphere around and that visually changing your view because you're having to look through a sphere, I don't think that particularly helps the visuals much. Here we have a game called Second to None, which is nothing of interest.
Is fighting and despair
Really?
all you know?
$1.39 English
escort me.
only. Think we can say no to that. Here we have a carp fishing simulator, which is mixed, unfortunately. I'm looking for a good fishing game. I don't know if I specifically would want one that's just carp, though. Why not multiple fish? This is mixed. It's $18.99 English, French, Italian, German, and Spanish. Here we have the Darkest Tales Into the Nightmare, which looks like it's a platforming game. Yep, it's positive so far, so I think it deserves a follow. It's free too, interesting. It's because Into the Nightmare, I guess, is a demo. English full audio, bunch of other languages. So yeah, this does look like it's a demo. So we'll wait till the real game comes out. if the real game ever comes out. There's a danger that I'm going to end up having more than my fair share of teddy bear style games where you're playing as a teddy bear or you're something similar in something that looks kid-friendly but is actually fairly scary looking. But I haven't covered any of those so far, so there's at least room to play a couple of them.
I am a prisoner of this world's whims.
Here we have Monster Dice, which doesn't look like a direct copy of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster Dice game, but looks somewhat similar. The problem with that is that the Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster Dice game was never really worth playing. It wasn't that good. And this visually doesn't look that good. $1.19 English and Chinese, but I guess for a Chinese game, you should at the very least applaud it for not being the lowest of effort style games that we have seen before. Here we have Seditionist Crutarch Royale. Crutarch Royale? I don't know what that really means. I know Seditionist means. I don't know what Crutarch means. And Royale, I assume just means Battle Royale. Seems like they've just used a thesaurus to say Battle Royale in a different way. Free to play, English full audio, soundtrack for $4.99. That's gonna be a no. Here we have a game on Steam called Dire Vengeance, which looks like a platformer. The art looks different. I'm not sure if it actually looks good. We are getting into the point where, like, if I see something like this, I can't dismiss a scene like this because this is your standard Metroidvania room, and this looks like your standard Metroidvania fighting area. So I can't really dismiss these, but we're starting to see a little bit more of these than I would expect to see. $19.99 English only. I guess I have to put it on the follow list, so I'll do that. Let's see, play this. And then play this. Actually, I should have played this and then played that.
You're in good hands. The sunlight is unwelcoming.
Let's see, next we have a game called Rune Raiders, which looks like it is a positional placement RPG game. Yeah, of no interest. $15.99, whole bunch of languages. Here we have a game called Occult, which looks like it is a horror game with a little bit more polish to it. Now, the question is this a multiplayer game, hide and seek type game, or is this a single player game? Online co-op horror game, mostly positive. Early access, it says it has single player, so I'm going to give it a follow, but I suspect the truth is it really does not play well in single player if it's playable at all in single player.
I'll get it right this time.
And then
You're done for.
evolve this.
Let him go.
Let's see, we have a game here with Asian characters, which looks like nothing. It's free, Chinese only. Does it have in-app purchases? Yes, it does. Here we have a game called The Sundrew, which looks like a point-and-click adventure game. I think I'm still a sucker for point-and-click adventure games, so I'll put this on the follow list. $13.49 English, French, and German.
No!
Yep. Since point-and-click adventure games kind of have this extra excuse to not be as pretty as most games are that I require. As far as the level of animation, there's a lot of opportunity for point-and-click adventure games to be bad. And I've said yes to putting a lot on the fall list and not really had the greatest of excuses or reasons for that. I don't know a way at the moment though to other than just wait for reviews to determine whether there is a low effort point and click versus a high effort point and click. Generally, most point and clicks have to be fairly high effort anyways, otherwise you just make a visual novel. Moving on, we have a visual novel here called The Henchman's Story. Which looks weird. Looks like a Western visual novel. Seems to be showing some generic henchmen characters. I wouldn't be surprised if this is super short. I have no idea how I just lost there. Like, no clue at all. I was winning last time I paid any attention. Let's see. English allegedly full audio. Is there anything here that would indicate fully voiced actors? I mean, I guess I'll put this on the fall list and we'll see how the reviews go if it's fully voice acted. It wants $14.99, which is not particularly expensive for a visual novel, which they all tend to be particularly expensive anyway, so that might be that diamond in the rough that I've been looking for as far as a visual novel with full voice acting that would potentially be one worth talking about. Full English voice acting in particular. There are a decent number of Japanese full voice acting visual novels, but that doesn't really help me. Next we have Arcade Tycoon Simulation, which doesn't seem like you need to call it Tycoon then Simulation. This doesn't look terrible as far as having an arcade, but as soon as you start zooming out, it does look pretty bad. $7.99, English full audio, a bunch of other languages. I think we could pretty much dismiss this. Also, I just don't think that's much of a game to really play. I guess I have to play this. And play this in the turn. Here we have a game called Ingredientia, which looks like it's probably a low polygon flower picking simulator for lack of a better term. Doesn't really look like there's any game there. $6.39, English only. Here we have a game called Evil Tonight, which looks like almost an RPG maker game, but I actually think there's a little bit more of a top-down twin-stick shooter element to it. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's turn-based gameplay. And once you break out of the turn-based RPG gameplay that you tend to see, then that catches my attention a lot more. $13.49, whole bunch of languages. Yeah, I think that deserves a follow. Okay. Do this to reduce this. And then we'll end the turn there. Here we have Cards of the Dead prologue, which is a prologue, so we can dismiss it. Overall, it doesn't look nicely animated. It does look like it is maybe a funny combination of zombie games and card games. So there might be something when Cards of the Dead actually comes out to consider here. English, Spain, Spanish. He conceded
I pray that you will be freed
after
from
going about
suffering.
5 turns of not being able to play anything. See, now we are just straight up stuck doing Forest Craft or Portal Craft, so we'll just try Portal Craft. And we're stuck just trying to burn through these games. Here we have Z-Spell Cats Pumpkin Prologue, which looks like nothing. English and German. Here we have a game called Chasing Static, which looks like nothing of real interest. It's saying it's a walking simulator. Yeah, I don't know if you would want a game where you're wandering around trying to like find the signal of static noise, whether there's a monster at the end of that signal or not. Like, I think if you were going to do a radio operator field day simulation of a game where you're running around chasing static and RF signal, I don't think you want that in a video game. I think you want to do that in real life, if you're going to do that at all, which most people aren't going to do that. Here we have Tactical Combat Department, which just looks kind of like a mobile phone game. Positional placement, turn-based RPG. $10.79, English only. Nothing there of interest. Here we have a game called Stolen Realm, which looks hex grid based, positional placement. Yeah, not really looking at it. $17.99, English full audio. Yeah, I don't see anything there of value. Here we have a game called Get Together, a co-op adventure. Is it co-op only? Play as apparently this dark bunny-like creature. Kind of looks like it's a point-and-click adventure game. Yeah, it's online co-op only though, so it's not the kind of game I could actually play. It feels like you have to. We've seen some other like communication-based co-op puzzle adventure games where the two players are in completely different locations and have to explain what they're saying and what's going on. In the previous instance in which I've seen a game like this, though, it was a more hyper-realistic 3D image and not a flat 2D art. Although, honestly, the flat 2D art might work just as well as the other game worked. Which I don't think there was really... Yeah, We Were Here is the game I'm thinking of. And they have a sequel here. It was relatively positive, but it didn't really go anywhere. Like, We Were Here 2 came out February 2nd, 2018. It has less than 4,000 reviews. And that really highlights the problem of making a co-op only game, is that you're just going to extremely limit your potential fan base. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Arc Mobius Censored Edition. This is the first time we've seen a Censored Edition game, or a game that just directly admits it's a Censored Edition, in a while. And yeah, otherwise this seems like this is a pretty low effort Asian game. I'm not sure if I'd say Chinese, probably not. $6.29, but then it has a free adult patch. It is Japanese and Chinese full audio. But overall, this is just another example of a game that really isn't worth playing. at all from the polish on it. And we still are very much in that position where it's a shame that there aren't more people out there trying to make really good games that just happen to have adult content in them. Succubus sort of is going down that route and trying to make a somewhat good game, but even Succubus I don't think is a great game. And we've had decades to barely even get to this point as far as people trying to make adult games, when we should be much more further along the line of making it socially acceptable to put adult content in games. Although in all fairness, even in the United States, it's still heavily unacceptable to have like adult sex scenes in R-rated movies, and the violence in R-rated movies has been drastically shifted so that it doesn't actually show gore or bullets actually getting going into people. Instead, it is just heavily implied or through often trickery, to the point now where a lot of movies are getting complained about because the camera just jumps from one cut to another cut so fast and so often that you can't even tell what action was supposed to be implied in the shot. You'll hear a gunshot and somebody will fall down, but there is like no actual shot in between there where you see the gun actually pointed towards somebody and that person is actually hit by the bullet. So everybody is getting turned into like the fainting goats, where they hear the gunshot and they just fall down. We don't really want to see R-rated movies get Disney-fied, but sadly Disney owns the Marvel movies, so the Marvel movies are getting Disney-fied, where if it was a different production company, the Marvel movies probably would try to be a little bit more adult friendly. Hit that one and hit that one.
Such a good guinea pig.
Do we really want to evolve here? Probably not. Next we have a game called Saturn Deluxe, which looks like nothing of interest. $4.20, English only. Yeah, nothing there of interest to say. Here we have Despot's Game Dystopian Army Builder, which doesn't look visually polished enough to interest me. It's a roguelike tactics army battler. You equip your team and sacrifice them through procedural dungeons as you fight enemies and other players.
You're through.
This is not a warning. Termination protocol.
It says single player with online PvP, bunch of languages. I'll give this a chance because this concept doesn't immediately strike me as something that people have tried before. A lot of giving different power-ups to different people. But I don't know if I can just excuse this level of pixeliness on the fact that maybe the characters are going to flood the screen and there's going to be hundreds of people on the screen at a time. Like, sometimes I could see myself excusing games for that reason, but even now I'm not certain I buy into that. Let's do this, and then do this, hit this, hit this, play this.
And relax.
Let's see. Let's not discard that. Play this.
Everything was a lie.
Do that.
The truth will cut you down.
Yeah, I guess that's as much as I can do. Aeon Must Die is out on Steam. We've seen a lot of advertisement around this, but we can see it's kind of mixed already. I'm gonna give it a follow, but it's probably just wasting my time at this point. And this definitely goes to show that it doesn't matter how much you advertise your game or promote it and put out advertisements and press releases around it. If people don't like it, people won't like it. And arguably, Aeon Must Die may have only put out press releases to people like Gamatsu, and that's why I heard about it at all. Here we have a game called The Hidden Room, which just looks like an asset flip horror game. It's free, English, Italian. Was that French? Yes. Close that. I'm just gonna leave this here on the home screen, even though we didn't get all of the daily quests done. And yeah, try to burn through these games and just call it a day, because I don't want to go any longer. It's been 3 hours and 16 minutes. Dungeon encounters doesn't really look like an interesting experience, because it is just like turn-based RPG stuff, and then you're walking around a very boring looking dungeon on paper. $23.99 English Japanese. That's way too expensive for what it's offering. Here we have a game called Soulmate, which looks like it is just an asset flip game, or perhaps a little animation, and that's really all it's got to show. Early access, $19.99 English, allegedly full audio. That's going to be a no. Here we have a game called The Alien Cube, which looks like it is just a horror asset flip game. Watch the video just to see if maybe there's more polish here. I don't know, there's enough video polish there, I think, to give it a chance. $17.99 English full audio, bunch of other languages, third-party EULA. I'm gonna give this a chance. Like, on the theory that maybe out there are a few decent horror walking simulators worth checking out. I'm not sure there really are, but I shouldn't just immediately dismiss that possibility. Here we have a game called Silicon City, which definitely can be immediately dismissed. Early access, $16.99 English and French. Definitely doesn't look like anything that would interest me. Here we have a game called Hashi Light, which looks like it is a puzzle game, and I have no idea how these number puzzles would work. They don't make any sense at all. And for any puzzle game, I think you need to be able to immediately look at a screenshot and figure out what this means. Like, this number 2 in blue versus this number 2 in green, what does that mean? And I can't figure it out. This is $3.59 English and Chinese. So that's going to be a no. Here we have a game called The Long Trail, which looks like nothing. $2.69 English and Polish. That's going to be a no. Here we have a game called Saved, which looks like it's a top-down shooter with polygonal characters, and that looks terrible. Just how dark it is in a dark area on a dark floor. That's not gonna work. $1.99 English only. No to that. Here we have Gunworld VR, which obviously is gonna be a no. $9.89, English, allegedly full audio. In VR, yeah, you've got like target shooting and animal shooting and what really just looks like a lot of asset flip stuff. There'd just have to be a lot better presentation and promotion of a game like that. I think there probably is a game at some point in VR where it is just all about the guns that would catch people's attention. I just don't think I've seen it yet. Here we have a game called Blade and Ham, which definitely seems like this is probably one of those games that has nudity in some version. Here you've got a woman tied to the ogre's shield as a human shield, which, yeah, that's extreme. And a lot of these graphics look like they might be particularly extreme in the visuals. Very muscly, these monsters are. Giant eyeballs. I wouldn't be surprised if the protagonist is mostly topless in some of these cases, but it's just so zoomed out. There was a couple of games that came out on Steam several years ago that were kind of like this, where it was a general just horrific hack and slash game, but then it was also trying to sell on like a Conan the Barbarian style nudity, and there was even a Conan the Barbarian style game that that tried to sell on that. But yeah, in this trailer I'm not really seeing any nudity, so, and I'm not seeing it tagged that way. Early access, $9.99, English full audio. I think this deserves a follow, just to see if it grows as a game. Otherwise, if it's just hack and slash with maybe a little bit of moving from room 1 to room 2, that could be fairly boring. And the Blade and Ham moniker does seem to be kind of silly, but it might work. In a lot of ways, this is a attempt at making a modern kind of Gauntlet game, I would say, depending on what you're expecting when you say Gauntlet game. Next we have a game on Steam called Crazy Truck, which that'll be in no, obviously. 59 cents, English only. Here we have Broken Thorns, The West Gate, which looks like it's a hand-drawn, they're saying RPG. Yeah, I don't think I could play a game like this. This hand-drawn animation really is too rough. Even if you told me that a little kid drew all these pictures and then somebody made a video game around it, like, I'm not going to be suckered by a story like that to play something like this. $3.19, English only. I think I have to say no to that. Here we have a game called Piggy Hunt, which looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter game. Actually, I think it's an Among Us clone, looking at it further. Early access, $4.99, English, allegedly full audio. Here we have Flying Cores, which looks like an old game, so I think I can dismiss that fairly easily. $19.99, English only. Here we have a game called Codename Tiaras, which looks like it's a platformer. It's probably not something I would want to play. It's from Digipin, so it's probably a student project. The question becomes, though, is there actually something to show off here as a student project, or would I just have to, if I was going to cover this game, really just BS through it and say, oh, look at this student project, it looks so good. It doesn't look that good, that's the problem. So I'd probably have to be fairly cruel and critical reviewing a game like this, and I think I'd prefer not to covered at all. It's free. It's English only. Digipin not really churning out a lot of big name game producers, I will point out. Not that any specific video game programming college has churned out a bunch of big recognizable name producers. You pretty much have to start at the bottom rung and work there for 30 years before your name even gets noticed by even the mainstream video game journalist people out there. Like, the last people that have shown any major success to me from Digipin was the people who made Portal, and that was nearly 20 years ago. So yeah, that's not really a good record. It's not like every single year more people are going to a wide and varied number of game developments companies and really contributing and getting their name out there. I imagine the video game programming world could use a few more presentations, annual events to show off newcomers to the industry, up and coming people. Far too many independent people, self-taught people are showing up as the next big thing in game development, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it really highlights that the actual education and schools that claim to know how to teach game programming are not doing a good job of getting those students employed. And that's not just in video game programming or even programming in general. A lot of schools, particularly in the United States, are not doing what they promise to do, which is have you educated and ready and give you the connections you need to get into and employ a like real world employed job. And yeah, there are a lot of people out there that graduate from college and then immediately end up working at McDonald's or some job that is nothing close to what their degree plan was around. And that's not just the students picking ridiculous degree plans, that's the colleges allowing ridiculous degree plans to exist and not preparing their students properly and not actually educating their students. Moving on, we have a Gematsu article here. Bandai Namco Studios establishes indie games label called Gyar Studio, Gyar. It's making a game called Survival Quiz City, published by Phoenix. Let's see. The Good Life is on Steam, which it's finally come out. And now the question is, will anybody actually play it and review it? At the moment, we'll have to leave The Good Life on follow. It's $29.99 English and Japanese. This is the game where you're basically playing a simulation / investigation game as this character, and she turns into a cat during the night. It's a weird game to say the least. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle has an article here that Dragon Age 4 is reportedly coming to the PS5, Xbox Series X, and PC only. It's skipping the PS4 and Xbox One releases, is the rumor. There is, I suppose, also a question is just, am I supposed to be personally interested in Dragon Age 4? Since I don't think I've played Dragon Age 3 or Dragon Age 2. I may very well have played like one of the Dragon Age games, but that's about it. And looking at this trailer, they're not really showing much of the game. So Dragon Age probably is very far off from being released. Anyways. Here we have a game on Steam called Magical Girl Creator, which... what do you do with this image after you created it is the question. Doesn't look like there's quite enough variety here. It seems like you can change hairstyle, dress, face, a helmet and a wand, or a hat and a wand, and that's about it. Then you can either randomize it, restart, or save it. Not much of a game there. $6.99, English, allegedly full audio. That is way too expensive for what it looks like it offers. Here we have Fuyo no Suma, which it just is a jigsaw puzzle with anime characters game for $1.19. Deathloop's first major update improves the NPC behaviors and targets crashes. It's now available for the PS5 and PC now. This is a Video Games Chronicle article. Which, yeah, I suppose a patch was definitely in order for Deathloop, but I don't think that particularly fixes the problem with Deathloop much. I think Deathloop is dead in the water as a game. Even the people who were talking a lot about it when it first came out have not said anything new about it since. But yeah, I just don't think there's going to ever be a real player base there. And it's not like that game even really needed a lot of multiplayer player base in the first place, but it does have multiplayer, and so that part of the game is probably never going to really work for most people in a year or two. Even now, it probably is unlikely that somebody would invade your game. But yeah, I think it's dead in the water. I don't think anything can fix Deathloop. They should have made major changes before releasing the game, so it wasn't such a kind of dull experience. Here we have a game on Steam called Tales of Black Death, which looks like it is a narrative-based game with maybe a little bit more of a gameplay mechanic than just narration. Looks slightly interesting. $9.99 might be a little too expensive, English and French. The art style definitely stands out too, as here's somebody doing some pencil sketch drawings that are definitely not trying to just look like a hyper-realistic Western game or look like a anime art style. This definitely feels like this is more of a French art style of drawing, and I suspect that's exactly the case. So let's put that on the fall list. Let's see. Video Game Chronicle says Nintendo is working on a fix for the Metroid Dread progression bug. The company apologizes for the issue and offers a workaround. Towards the end of the Switch game, if the player destroys a door while a map marker for the specific door is displayed on the map, the title will forcibly close and the error message will appear. That seems like that's something that could very easily happen. Players who encounter the error are advised to restart the game, and before playing through the sequence again, remove the door icon map marker to stop the error reoccurring. Which I assume they don't mean that you have to start the whole game from the beginning. I assume they just mean restart the game. So I think Video Games Chronicle is being a little inaccurate to say this is a progression breaking bug. I guess you probably would just call it a crash. Really, that's a more accurate description of what it is. Unless I'm totally misunderstanding. Let's see. And then Video Game Chronicle has the Animal Crossing Direct. Watch today's Nintendo live stream. I don't know if this actually was today though. Or not. Alright, so that's going to leave a fairly high number of games for Monday. but I want to wrap up here. So now I'm just going to go through my Twitter feed for this Friday and and see if there's any new news worth talking about. Otherwise, we can call the stream, and I'd be more than happy to call the stream. Yep. It's clear that my insomnia still is affecting me quite a bit. Valve apparently has banned cryptocurrency games and NFTs from Steam. There hasn't been a cryptocurrency or NFT game that I've seen that's been allowed on Steam, so I assume they're just preemptively saying that we're not allowing these things, which honestly, the second that cryptocurrencies are announced and NFTs were announced as an idea, Valve should have banned that. And I think you pretty much put a fairly generic thing to say, hey, no, we're not going to let you have any kind of program on Steam that is connecting to a blockchain like technology that is spending a lot of GPU or CPU cycles. If anything, Valve should be investigating that fairly heavily anyways if a game is taking a lot of GPU and CPU cycles. That's not something that Valve customers want, I can confidently say. And there's been more than enough complaints of games feeling like they secretly have a cryptocurrency miner in them. So there's been, Valve is making the right decision. Now, arguably, this is a new step in the direction of curation for Valve, that their libertarian mentality probably does not really enjoy having to make, but I don't think Valve can really afford to do anything different and maintain a good storefront. Maintain itself as a good storefront. And honestly, I think occasionally Valve throws out a bone to its libertarian employees, but I think in reality, if they were going to embrace all of libertarianism, they would fail miserably as a company. And honestly, I don't think there's as much of a established doctrine as to what a true libertarian company would look like, or even what a true libertarian person looks like. It is often a phrase that at the moment is mostly used as a self-describer, but certainly could also be used as a insult. I think a lot of people, particularly in more liberal environments such as video game development, use the phrase libertarian as a sneaky way to avoid saying you're actually a Republican in the United States. I'm getting very dangerously to having a political opinion on a YouTube video game critic channel, so I am done with the news, and let's end here. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.